I can't believe it. After months of preparation, I transformed my bedroom into a tropical oasis. And I must say, I am proud of what we built. This is my new 100-gallon saltwater paludarium. It has been a dream of mine for years to combine plants with my saltwater projects. But if you know anything about plants, they do not like salt. This posed a huge challenge for this upcoming build, and it is safe to say, the construction of this ecosystem turned out to be very difficult. Constructing this 8-foot-long aquarium has been an adventure full of trial and error, but the beauty of it all made it all worth it in the end. This new little world of ours will serve us a lot of opportunities to explore the beauty of underwater life, and I will explain how we built this unique mist-breeding saltwater ecosystem and how it transformed my bedroom into a tropical oasis. I can't wait to share what I have in mind for this new project in the coming months. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Denny's Aquariums YouTube channel. Now before getting started, I knew that creating a saltwater paludarium was no easy task. There was no tutorial online on how to build something like this. But I knew that with the knowledge I had gained about aquariums over the past 10 years, I could turn my vision into life. So let's take it back to day one and let me show you how we built this. If you've been a regular viewer of the channel, you'd know that I had a 3-tank setup for a few years. These aquariums were a lot smaller than the one I am currently building. After breaking down my old aquariums and carefully bringing the live animals to friends of mine, it was time to start working on this new aquarium right away, because a few days later, my friend from K-Reef Aquarium Hobby and Aqualife were coming over to deliver this new 100-gallon aquarium. This new aquarium was going to be super heavy, so we put these wooden beams on the floor to help distribute the weight a lot better. We then began setting up the new cabinets. This was a pretty easy process despite these cabinets coming from IKEA. The instruction manuals were pretty easy to understand. Out of all the options that were presented to me, I went for kitchen cabinets, as these are pretty sturdy and you can be sure that they don't get damaged by a little bit of water. Once set up, I put some foam mats where the aquarium was going to be, and we drilled 2 holes close to the wall for the cables to go through. This turned out to be our first mistake, but we'll talk about that later. I decided to go for LEDs from the brand Ilumagic, as I've seen some incredible setups thrive with these lights. They advised me to go for 4 saltwater lights and 1 freshwater light. We are using the freshwater light for the plants that we want to incorporate with this setup, because they prefer daylight over blue light. To make sure that the fixtures were all lined up perfectly, we pulled out a laser which would guide us in the right direction. The first step was completed and we were ready for the biggest challenge of this whole setup: carrying the 8-foot-long glass aquarium up 2 flights of narrow stairs into my bedroom in the attic. Well, 5 people, a sawn-off railing, a lot of swear words, and an hour later, the tank made it into my bedroom. Luckily though, I plan on keeping this aquarium for many years, so if you want to follow along on this build, make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video and subscribe to the channel. Throughout this project, I have had a ton of help from family and friends. It's been a fun project to work on. Now, I didn't want to rush setting it up like I did with my previous setup. The average hobbyist sets up an aquarium in a day or night, just like I did with my last few setups. And then after you're done setting it up, you regret not working on it for a bit longer. So instead of doing just that, I built this aquarium over the course of a few weeks, working on some small things every night. This was a lot of fun and it allowed me to really work out the details of this setup because it was quite complicated. I didn't want a setup with a sump, which for those of you that don't know, a sump is a smaller aquarium underneath your main tank which houses your pumps and filtration. Instead of using a sump, I had the idea of hiding my equipment behind the reef. This aquarium will rely on natural filtration through beneficial bacteria and live filter feeders inside the aquarium. And we will not be using any mechanical filtration except for a small surface skimmer behind the rocks to skim off the oily looking substance that forms on the surface of aquarium water. This is called biofilm, which basically is a layer of bacteria which would normally fall down into your sump through your tank's overflow. This is a massive aquarium and setting it up has been very expensive. I couldn't afford to make any mistakes. I started off by taping out my idea inside the aquarium. It allowed me to work out the flow plan, making sure there is flow all throughout the tank. This is really important in a saltwater aquarium for numerous reasons. Flow encourages gas exchange at the water surface, allowing oxygen to dissolve into the water and allow carbon dioxide to escape. Flow carries away detritus, uneaten food and waste products from fish and corals. Without adequate water movement, these substances could accumulate in certain areas, leading to poor water quality, algae growth, or even toxic buildups like ammonia or nitrates, which can harm or kill the inhabitants. And there are so many more reasons as to why flow is so important in a saltwater aquarium. And now for the aquascape itself. Rather than placing big, view-obstructing power heads to generate flow on the glass, I decided to use some return pumps, all located in a central compartment behind the reef. With silicone tubes, we were able to bring the flow to the desired areas on the reef, and we could hide the outflow in between the rocks. I also wanted to create a little tide pool in the aquarium. If you've been to the beach before, you know that tide pools are small, shallow areas of water that form with the tides. Inside these little pools you can find a lot of small critters like fish, shrimp, crabs, starfish and even some small corals. I figured this could be something very interesting for this aquarium. Rather than using a ton of sand and rocks to get the elevation we need for this, I built a structure using Acrate. With pond liner I sealed it off so the sand doesn't fall through. I did leave the back of the structure open as well as some small gaps on the sides to allow for proper flow exchange. Now a good friend of mine was nice enough to help out with this scape, as he has a lot of experience with freshwater aquascapes and was excited to work on his first saltwater aquarium. We had to make sure that the pumps were easily accessible in case we ever need to service them, so we placed one pump in the back of the aquarium which would suck water in from underneath the tide pool and blow it back out on the right side of the tank. We also glued the magnets of one of my old power heads to the side of the tide pool. This power head will be hidden in a small cave so you don't see it. Rather than using a few big rocks and putting them on a big pile like a lot of reefers do, the aquascaping mind of my friend figured it would be a cool idea to make a nice cape with a lot of smaller rocks. With glue and an accelerator, this was a pretty easy but very time-consuming task. We filled up big gaps with filter floss so the fish can't get behind the rocks because we want to see them. I am not too worried this will lead to problems down the road. A lot of detritus will get caught in this floss, but hopefully the beneficial bacteria will help break it all down. After a few hours we only managed to do a small part of the reef. After my friend left, I started building the cover to hide the equipment. However, my shaky hands didn't think this was a good idea. So instead I decided to prepare more rocks by breaking them down using a hammer and a drill. This was a great workout, it was not easy at all. We glued leftover Acrate to the glass to protect it from the heavy rocks. We don't want this glass to crack. We were able to glue down the base of the back wall and build out the tide pool. We installed another return pump in the back chamber, a smaller version for the tide pool. We were able to make quite a bit of progress and I was really happy seeing it all take shape. I decided to get some inspiration at the Royal Dutch Burger Zoo as they have an awesome mangrove theme. And oh boy, I really want a manatee in my tank now. Just kidding. However, I did see some awesome mangrove trees and I hope mine will grow as big as these ones, so I have an excuse for an even bigger tank. I really like the look of this river's edge with wood and fern plants. I want to build something like this for my setup. Alrighty, it was time to head home and continue with my build. There is still a lot of work to do. We decided to build an arch so we can place a lot of coral on top of it and fish can swim underneath it. As you saw earlier, we installed a power head on the side of the tide pool so the flow can go straight underneath this arch. We were not even close to being done, but we wanted to put the dots on the eye with what we've built so far. Right now it still looked like a man-made structure with a ton of small rock fragments glued together. We wanted to make it look like a solid piece, so with some aquarium silicone and rubble from the rocks we destroyed earlier, we could fill in the cracks and make it look like one big rock. I had to build a second chamber to house a return pump and a small heater to distribute flow and heat a lot better. It's a big challenge to get it right for a tank this long. I decided to put this chamber in the left back corner of the aquarium so we could build the river part we saw at the zoo on top of it. We also built a mountain in the middle of the aquarium connecting all the different themes of the reef to it. I put some of my mangroves and plants in the aquarium to get an idea of the look of it. It was time to prepare the wood for the aquarium. We had to soak it in some hot water for a few hours and repeat this process a few times to get as many tannins out as possible. You can use wood in your reef tank, but it comes with some disadvantages and risks. It's very uncommon to use wood in a saltwater environment. It will break down over time and lower your pH levels, which could lead to problems. But in my case, I only wanted to submerge a few small pieces, so on a tank this big, I'm not too worried this will lead to big problems. Now unfortunately we have to remove some of these plants later in this video to make sure that they don't get close to the salt water. But for now we just place them where I want them to be eventually. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to fill up the aquarium with sand and water. Each bag of sand comes with a smaller pack of bacteria to help bring it all back in balance and clear up the water. In the areas I plan on planting mangrove trees, I put some miracle mud. It doesn't really look like mud if you ask me, it looks like gravel, but either way, this stuff is supposed to contain all the minerals the plants may need in order to thrive. It will also be a great substrate for the plants to grow their roots in. I had to add 120 pounds of live sand. That's a lot. But now it was time to add water to the aquarium and I had to carry it all up the stairs. It was an intense workout to say the least. Once I had about 4 inches of water in the tank, I decided to plant the mangrove trees. Mangroves are pretty difficult. First, I had to acclimate them to salt water, as they are usually grown in brackish water or even fresh water. This process took about a month as I had to slowly adjust the salinity levels in the water. You also have to be very careful with the roots because damaged roots will likely be a death sentence to these plants. Once they are damaged, they won't be able to maintain pressure to keep the salt out, so eventually they will just die, so we have to be very careful with this. The mangroves were planted and I decided to test out the return pumps, making sure they all worked as they were supposed to. This was pretty nerve-wracking because if it didn't work out, it would be a disaster. Luckily though, it all worked perfectly, so it was time to top off the aquarium with the rest of the water. As you can see here, I had to take down the plants from the river's edge because they weren't safe there yet. I cured some live rock from Indonesia in a separate aquarium a few weeks before, which we could now add to the aquarium as well. The tank was super cloudy and some foam formed on top of the water. This foam likely consists of dead bacteria that came out of the sand and rocks. I added a small surface skimmer to help remove this foam, even though it's not even harmful. While the cloudiness was settling, I decided to build a separate compartment using Acrate and pond liner for the plants on the river's edge. That way we can water it with fresh tap water and the plants will be completely separated from the salt water. I added some nitrifying bacteria from our channel sponsor Fritz Aquatics to help break down toxic ammonia and nitrites. After that it was time to wait. I installed a mist maker to mist the plants a few times a day to keep them nice and moist. Now I do have very good ventilation in my room, so I hope that the humidity levels will hopefully be acceptable. If not, I'll have to install a small dehumidifier in the room. To go back to the 2 holes we drilled earlier behind the aquarium, we should have drilled a lot more, because there is not a lot of space left for the dosing pumps and the auto top-off we have to install later. After a week or so, I tested my water for ammonia and nitrite, as high levels of these can be deadly to livestock. Unfortunately, there was still a bit of nitrite present in the water, so we had to wait a bit longer before we could add any fish or coral. The tank was super clear and I was so happy with the look of it so far. 2 weeks in, the plants were still alive and doing well. And let me tell you, that's the longest I've ever kept plants in my room alive. I tested the water again and it seemed like a good moment to introduce the first animals to the aquarium. Some algae started to form on the sand and rocks, which was a great sign. So first I decided to add a mix of snails. 10 turbo snails to keep the rocks clean, 5 Babylona snails that will live in the sand bed keeping it loose and clean. And I also added 10 very small snails to go in between the small cracks and keep those clean as well. No one wants a nasty crack, right? And that's not all, because my old pair of clownfish that I kept in my other aquarium were so excited to go explore this massive tank as well. They will have so much more room to swim here. I plan on buying a nice anemone for them very soon. When you first set up your saltwater aquarium, it's like bringing a piece of the ocean into your home. But how do you create a healthy, thriving environment for your fish from the very beginning? Meet the unsung heroes of a saltwater aquarium, live copepods. These tiny crustaceans may be small, but they play a huge role in your aquarium. Imagine you're a fish in a strange new world. Live copepods are the perfect natural food source. They're packed with nutrients and ideal for fish that are shy or finicky eaters, like mandarins and even clownfish. For fish like the mandarin dragonet, which I plan to add later, finding food can be a challenge, especially in a new environment. But with copepods, it's like having a buffet of tiny delicious snacks right at their fins. And that's not all. Copepods aren't just food, they are also nature's cleanup crew. They help break down waste, control algae, and keep your aquarium water pristine and clear. It's like having a tiny team of janitors working around the clock to keep your aquarium nice and clean. Without even realizing it, these little guys are balancing your aquarium's ecosystem, creating a healthier environment for your fish and coral. So, when you start your saltwater journey, don't forget the live copepods. They're the unsung heroes helping your underwater world thrive right from the start. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited about this new project. It's been in the works for such a long time and I am so excited to finally be able to show it to you all. Let me know what you think about this setup and what we should do with it next. There are so many options in terms of fish, coral, macroalgae and inverts. So if you have any suggestions, comment them down below and make sure you are subscribed to the channel, and I hope to see you on the next episode. Thanks for watching.